everyone, this is Sergey Sputnikov again. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ushanka Show, where everyone can learn something new about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. In today's video, we're going to talk about сельские клубы, village clubs, and its kind of unusual form, передвижные сельские клубы, mobile village clubs.
You are a fucking agent. All of your pictures are bullshit. Your arguments, too. Look, inequality un USA. USSR was a young country developing. You would be better than China is today. You are an anti-communist. Just accept it, brother. The opportunities you claim are nothing compared to millions of Americans. And are not in Russia because migrated. USSR gave you everything, hypocritical scumbag.
So almost every village in the Soviet Union had so-called сельский клуб, village club, and most of the time, it will be a repurposed church or former estate of a local landowner. So they didn't usually build new buildings, they just repurposed old large buildings, which happen to be churches or estates. So, for example, this is the building where the village club was located in my mother's village in northern Ukraine. It originally was a church built probably in the early 1900s. Then in early 1960s, it was shut down as a church and repurposed as the village club, сельский клуб. And some of you may recognize this guy, although he's trying to hide behind those ugly BCGs, birth control glasses. That's right, this is Comrade Sergey back in 1989, posing next to the sign that says Zhavitskoy сельский клуб, village club of Zhovit, that's the name of our village. And as I said, this picture was taken, I believe, in 1989, so this is after my first year in college. By the way, if you want to learn more about Soviet-era BCGs, birth control glasses, a while back I already made a video on this topic, and link will be below in the comment section. And I need to mention another cool accessory besides ugly glasses that I'm wearing. I'm wearing a really cool electronic watch made in Hong Kong. The brand was Montana. Well, in my case, it was Arias. It featured 16 melodies, and I paid insane amount of 50 rubles for them in 1988 when I could afford it, since I had a stipend in college. And I shared the story in my video Soviet Kamok. Once again, link will be below in the comment section. And I apologize for this small detour, and now let's go back to the topic of the village clubs in the Soviet Union. Soviet-era village clubs perform several functions. Of course, there'll be, first of all, a place for the locals to gather for meetings or whatever. It usually housed a local library. In the evenings, it will work as a movie theater, and that's the only reason I went to our local village club is to watch movies. So in the summer, they start about 9 p.m., and it's a lot of movies that I watched back in the Soviet days. They'll be actually in the village. And of course, there'll be a place to hang out. There'll be a pool table. There could be dances sometimes. So this is kind of a club, did everything. And speaking of our village club, the club was shut down sometime in the early 2000s because the building was transferred back to the church, and church reopened the church. But they discovered shortly after that there was not enough people to support. You still need to pump some money out of locals, and there's just not enough locals to support full-time priest, so end up shutting down the church again, and now it's being reopened for religious services only on occasions during the big religious holidays. Customer right now. Now we will be looking at this building. So this is the church, which now is closed because there was not enough people in this village to support the priest. So there was a church originally before revolution. After the revolution, they knocked the cross down and took away this building from the Russian Orthodox Church. And for many years it was a club. So there was a movie theater, they had a pool table. And now let's talk about this unusual form of village clubs, so-called mobile village clubs, передвижные сельские клубы. I never heard of it, but I stumbled upon a couple of 1955 videos that shows these buses or trucks going to villages and performing for the locals. So let's watch a couple of movies and I will provide the commentary. Okay, so as I mentioned, it was filmed in 1955, most likely in October and November, because people look like they dressed up warm. And this is a mobile village club. Looks like they performing some kind of lecture related to space, as I could guess based on this signage. So it's right during the space race. And there's the villagers, and they probably knew that they'll be filmed, so this is their best clothing they could get. No cars, no motorcycles, just a single bike. And the guy, there's this microphone and the speakers. And this is a small group. So it's a tiny village. Probably doesn't make sense to have a club for them. So they just gathered. And this is really unusual bus. It's called ZIS 16. Unusual, it's kind of old, and this is, the front row has some seats, people in the back just standing, couple more bicycles, and they're getting a lecture about successes of the Soviet space industry and how soon we're going to be in space, or maybe even reach for the moon. So there's a scientist, you could see there's a planets, and left one is rock. And for my friends who are interested in vintage cars and buses, this was bus ZIS 16, which was manufactured in 1940s and was apparently quite advanced for its era. Second video, also filmed in 1955, starts in downtown Moscow. It's kind of unusual, next to the Central House of Art Workers, Центральный дом работников искусств. So this truck is also a mobile village club, but it's waiting for art workers from Moscow to go to a village to entertain local collective farm workers. It's already first cute detail. There's no step ladder, nothing. They're just kind of helping each other to climb on the back of the truck to go to the village and entertain locals. There's interesting, they're unloading supplies from a truck to a horse buggy. So it tells you that even not far away from Moscow, the roads were so bad in the villages, the truck couldn't make it. They had to transfer it to the horse. So that's already very interesting. Although people somehow made it, you will see it next. And now art workers had arrived and they finally figure out if they'll put a chair, it will help people to get off the truck. So once again, they think it's funny, so they filmed that part, but to think about it, how primitive conditions could be that even didn't have a special ladder for people to get off and get on the trucks. And now they just go for a little stroll, like all dressed nicely, long coats, so-called palto and hats. So they're just enjoying the stroll and in the countryside. And here the legendary GAZ ГАЗ-51 truck rolling past with the banner «Создадим обилие сельскохозяйственных продуктов в стране. Let's create abundance of agriculture produce in the country». And here's actual performance. It looks like it's done right in the middle of the fields. There was a kind of fancy Soviet car. I believe it's also a ZIS, an interesting old tractor. Looks like old International. And here's performance in the front of collective farm workers. As I mentioned, they probably just paused their work in order to watch. And they even dancing, look at that. But once again, I guess it's a little bit warmer weather. Women looks like still dressed pretty warm. And they're playing music, they're singing, doing all kind of stuff. And this is endless fields of Soviet Russia where you need to fight for the abundance of agriculture products. Looks like they did several stops, so they performed out in the fields. Now they stop in a village, and once again they're singing. There's a map for some reason attached to the truck, and this Asian looking lady does different like a circus style tricks. And once again you have a bunch of kids and adults just standing watching. They even didn't bother to bring chairs out, so that's interesting. stop looks like they brought workers by a truck, so probably from a local milk farm. It's all ladies. Look how they dressed. My goodness. And this is the realities of the Soviet collective farm workers, extremely poor, working just for the check mark, and now they're being entertained. Once again, I don't see any chairs, just a bunch of people surrounding the truck, and you got all this type of different entertainment, making workers holding stuff, and they performing tricks and even kids climb on a tree to watch better. That's classic. This is awesome. Now it's time for the art workers to get entertained. It looks like they came to visit a local pig farm, so they're even afraid to touch a piglet. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So it just makes you wonder what's going on through their heads. Oh boy, they're acting drunk or they are drunk. Now, what was going on through their heads going through the local pig farm versus what was going on through the collective farm workers while they watched these fancy dressed people coming to entertain them and tell them about benefits of working for the communist future. Okay, my friends, I bow my head as well, and I hope you enjoy my commentary to these 1955 videos about entertaining Soviet-era collective farm workers using so-called mobile village clubs, передвижные сельские клубы. Thank you so much for watching Ushanka Show. Don't forget to like this video, and we'll talk to you soon. До побачення. Goodbye. And now we're in downtown Zhoved, the village that I spend every summer in 70s and 80s. As you see, it's 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning and not much going on. White building behind the monument is our local grocery store. I don't think they have a single customer right now, but we will be looking at this building. So this is the church, which now is closed because there was not enough people in this village to support the priest. So there was a church originally before revolution. After the revolution, they knocked the cross down and took away this building from the Russian Orthodox Church, and for many years it was a club. So there was a movie theater, they had a pool table, they had meetings there. And I went here quite often during my summer break to watch movies. So now it's transferred back to the church properties, but they didn't have it open for too long because there was not enough people to donate money to support a full-time priest. And here we have a monument to the fallen soldiers during the World War II. It looks like this village was freed from Germans in September 24, 1943. So this grave contains 21, there's a list of 21 soldiers and one major that died, and also 68 unknown soldiers. Which is kind of interesting because, you know, when you retreat and you lose soldiers, they could become unknown because you left them behind. But if you move forward, I don't understand how the soldiers could be unknown. But this is another monument to the fallen soldiers during the World War II, Great Patriotic War. And this is like a standard monument. I think they probably made them in tens of or hundreds of thousands because I see a similar design all over the country. Back in the good old Soviet days, store at the left, that was a grocery actually store, and this on the right was so-called Selmag. So on the left was Selpo, on the right was Selmag, so that was selling clothing, shoes, whatever items of everyday use. And that's where I spend a lot of hours waiting in line to buy bread. That was a really basic selection of grocery items. Salt was in the bags, sugars was sold from the bags, maybe a couple options of cigarettes, a couple of options of vodka, bread when it's available, and a lot of canned fish. We never had shortage of canned fish. But otherwise, all through the 80s, it was really bare. And I remember a lady told me that usually they sold about 500 rubles worth of goods in this store, the hardware shop. New addition to our downtown is that little playground. Apparently some guy was trying to get elected, so he donated money and he planted. They've installed similar playgrounds in several villages around here, but he lost anyways. So our village actually has two monuments dedicated to the soldiers, fallen soldiers of World War II. This one is dedicated to the local villagers that didn't come back. So our village wasn't that small, wasn't that big either, but we lost a lot of people in the war. So there's a nine. Wow, I'm bad with math today too. So we got 4 and 4, 8, so 10 boards pretty much filled with names. So that's the local men that never came back from war. So as you see, Soviet government haven't spent a lot of money on these monuments, but didn't do much to support actual veterans that survived the war. This house sits abandoned for a long time. I remember taking pictures of this house probably about 10 years ago. It was already abandoned, and it's right downtown. There's a club. Now club is there, village club. And no one is interested. Actually, it looks like roof is in really good shape, but logs probably getting bad. And right here next to it is the cellar. So that's how the usually cellars were built, like a little separate item building. And this is our shuttered post office. This is the building I came to pick up my parcels with bananas. If you listen to my story about bananas in the village, this is the place I came to pick it up. They actually even cut out power already. Wow. So they're trying to figure out how to save money with the villages dying out. So they decided it's too expensive to have a full-time post office person. So now it's closed, and I think it's open once a week for a couple of hours, something like that. I'm not positive because there's no more, powers go behind, never mind. The outside lights are removed, but power's still there. I think it opens once a week for a couple of hours for people to get pensions. So it creates huge line even in this small village. Just like in Ushanka, this is Soviet era mailbox. Soviet symbol removed. In Russian letters, Pochta, repainted in Ukrainian style Pochta. So you can still, it's kind of like ironic. You can still feel it, you can see still the letters, Russian letters going through it. Here you also schedule when they usually pick up stuff, but they erase it since there's no more mail being picked up out of this and the access door.